Hi, I'm Pierre-Marc de Champlain, Director of Product Management at Berger. And in this short video today, we're going to show you the importance of maintaining a good soil structure in your containers and avoiding compaction. Let's start with the basics. So when you've got growing media in a container and you saturate it with water, the excess water will drain out. Now, the water that remains in the growing media most of it's available to the plant for the roots to uptake. Whatever has drained out actually represents the airspace that is left in the growing media. That airspace is actually created by what we call pores, and that is what generates the porosity of the growing media. So it's really the pores created by the structure and the ingredients of the growing media that will allow air to return to the growing media, because yes, roots do need air to thrive and to develop into a healthy root system. So some growing media is engineered with smaller particles like the BM2 that we have here. So you can see here that we don't have any large chunks. The perlite is fine and the vermiculite is fine as well. And the reason behind that is that it is really designed for seed germination and plant propagation. Now in that context, you want to have a uniform moisture content, for example, around the seed for it to crack efficiently and to get good germination rate. The smaller particles will actually still create pores, but those pores will be much smaller. And so the overall airspace and porosity of a germination mix or a propagation mix will typically be much lower than a finished mix like we have here on the left. It's our BM5 HP, which is comprised of coarse peat moss, perlite, and wood fiber, and that creates a soil structure that is much more forgiving, with more porosity and more drainage. Now the reason behind that is that growers want to have that ability to go irrigate and fertilize more rapidly so that they could optimize the production of their crops. So as long as the growing media is handled correctly, in both cases you should know what to expect and be able to predict the behavior of the growing media. However, what happens if there's compaction and compression that's applied to the growing media within the containers? So we're going to do a short demo to demonstrate the effects of compaction. So here I've got 3 containers and we're going to apply different levels of compaction to those containers. So here I filled 3 containers the same way. We're using clear containers here so you can really see the structure of the soil and the effect that the compaction will have. So on the left here, we'll keep that container as is. And here in the middle, what I'll do is I'll show you the effect of just some light tapping on the growing media. So you can already see, just with lifting it half an inch and dropping it very lightly, you can see the top of the soil, the level has already gone down in reference to the lip. Now, if I grab that container, lift it even higher and drop it and be a little bit more rough with it, you can see that it's practically doubled the level of oxygen that you've lost, because that layer that you see at the top of what has gone down is actually oxygen that's been removed from the soil, the pores that have been compressed with that action. Now if I go to the other extreme on the right over here and I even compress the soil within the growing media, you will see that you get even less pores, and we'll try to see that here in the front. So if we look closely at the growing media in the container on my right, which was pressed down, you can see that the pores are no longer visible. That's because we've compacted it and we've pressed them out. Rest assured, the elasticity of the peat moss will help maintain some of the structure, but the design structure of the growing media has clearly been compromised. So every action you take will have an impact on the structure of the soil. Overhandling will create compaction, which will reduce the porosity of the growing media. By reducing the airspace, you'll end up with less oxygen around the root system, which will mean less nutrient uptake and less root development, which will then lead to a longer production time. Now, you can avoid excessive compaction by handling your soil gently, by adjusting your equipment adequately, and by storing your containers and trays properly. For example, your equipment should not cause excess damage to the peat moss and other ingredients. The damage breaks larger particles into smaller ones, reducing the number and size of the pores it can create. The mix should be at optimal moisture content before potting. This will not only maximize usable volume, but it will also help lock in the structure. If it's too wet, the additional weight will cause some excess compression. The growing media shouldn't fall into the containers from too high, or it will be more compacted. When removing excess soil from the top, you should avoid compressing additional volume into the container. Avoid nesting pre-filled containers that are stacked for storage. If you don't, you will end up with significant challenges during production, especially with uniformity. The containers or trays on the top rows will have little to no compression, while the containers at the bottom will be very compressed, leading to some major inconsistencies in your irrigation practices, with some sections holding water for too long while others are drying down faster. To avoid this, you should use rigid trays or spacers between each layer to preserve the structure. Another option is to stagger the containers or trays to avoid any undue pressure on the substrate. In conclusion, it's important to be cognizant of the negative impact of compaction, which can be detrimental to the uniformity and overall performance of your production. Thank you for watching, and please check out our other videos.